Welcome to Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Ed Piskor.
And I'm Tom Scholey, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics, and Fantastic Four Grand Design.
Daredevil the Man Without Fear miniseries is what is under the microscope today. But first, I want to invite you guys to like, follow, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the bell so that we can notify you when new videos are available, and that'll mitigate the kayfabe effect, which is what happens when we talk about comics early in the day when we put these videos out there. By early afternoon, midday, the stuff we talk about often goes out of print or disappears off of the secondary market online, Amazon, eBay, or it's just prohibitively expensive and even harder to get. If you watch these videos to the very end, you're also going to help the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel out a lot by pushing our content out to a wider comic book viewing audience on YouTube. Helps us increase our subscriber numbers and continue to make it possible to bring you these videos on a regular basis. Without further ado, let's take a look at Daredevil Man Without Fear 5-issue miniseries by a murderer's row of creative talent, from Frank Miller's repurposed screenplay treatment to John Romita Jr.'s incredibly lush pencils to Al Williamson's great finishes, Christy Max Shields' color on top of the artwork, long-standing tradition in the JRJR Al Williamson tradition. Christy also colored Daredevil Born Again. So she has a long relationship with the character, and Joe Rosen on lettering duties, man, to kind of tie everything together. Man, this series, this is basically when I really started to discover comic shops, is when this thing started to come out. And this was on the racks, man, $2.95. It was the price of 3 comics to get my hands on this thing, of which I did not. I had a buddy who got a hold of it, and somehow through those like childish, like I'll give you this and you give me that kind of barter system that went on as kids, I might have given him, I don't know, a couple football cards or something like this, man, an Isaiah Thomas rookie for this issue right here, because he could not leave my house with it. I needed to have this comic here.
Yeah, when for me, when this came out, it was like after the bubble burst or whatever, and I was like, you know, really getting into like Frank Miller and stuff and hunting stuff. And this was like ubiquitous. Yeah. This was everywhere. This was, you know, at like closeout prices. We
did a John Romita Jr. shoot interview on the channel where you're talking to the guy, man. And we asked the question, you know, what is your masterpiece? What comic are you most proud of? Because he is a famously self-effacing creator, always puts himself down, extremely humble.
Yeah, like his dad, you know, downplays his you know place, his, you know, very important place in the history of comics.
Yes, but there's also a component in John Romita Jr. where he feels like he has to show and prove because of all the people who have given him strife for nepotism and just always bringing his dad up in the mix whenever he would have a fresh opportunity. He talks about it at great length, like in our shoot interview, and he cited this series as the piece that he's most proud of in terms of his career, because he said he really wanted to shut people up with their rhetoric about him when he was putting this comic together. And I think that this is just an incredible John Romita Jr. vehicle.
Yeah, I mean, Miller, when they were working on it, Miller referred to this as the Daredevil Bible. He wants to make, like, this is it. And that's kind of how it was for me. I read this before I read, you know, like the stories that it references. You know, this was kind of like a really good starting point for getting into Daredevil.
I believe in one of the Wizard magazines that we're talking about, as this thing was coming out, it was referred to as Daredevil year 1 through 7.
Yeah, Miller's treatment is called Blind Justice, which, like, I don't know if you remember, like in the early 2000s, there was a TV series called Blind Justice by Stephen Bochco about a blind lawyer who solves crimes and has a radar sense. He looks exactly like Matt Murdock. I feel like, you know, they had like Frank Miller's TV movie treatment or whatever, and like, you know, built off that. But, you know, who knows? It only lasted a season, so.
Well, it's better than Steve Bochco's Cop Rock, right? Like, what was that, one episode? Did Steve Bochco do that?
Stephen Bochco did Cop Rock. I don't know how long it lasted, though, but I think it's due for a reappraisal.
The things you get on Cartoonist Kayfabe when Jimmy's away. from the opening splash.
Now, guys who draw, like, for a long time, if you wanted to draw Marvel Comics, you had to move to New York, you know? And it's like, this is what you get out of it. This is like a viewpoint that somebody who knows that world can do. And man, what a great, like, upward feeling and like air and openness, but confinement. It's really well observed.
Absolutely, man. This going through this book absolutely did make me feel like we should never set our comics in New York if
Yeah.
we're not living there, because this all feels solid and rooted in a lifetime existence of observation in those confines.
Yeah, my superhero universes center around Pittsburgh.
It's very smart. Very smart, man. Back in the days when you had cops walking the beat, getting to know everybody in the neighborhood and little kids acting fools, but he notices Matt Murdock's a good kid. Should be more like him. Chekhov's Billy Club.
Yeah, I mean, it's the origin of Daredevil's Billy Club. Like, yeah, and yeah, within this work, it pays off, but just within the larger, Daredevil thing, there's how he gets hooked up with his Billy Club. There's how he gets hooked up with his dual identity of good boy Matt Murdock and bad boy Daredevil.
Great acting in his panels, and JR absolutely known for being an impeccable storyteller, and it is on display here in spades. Body language and weight is also something that I think about with JR. Never draws the same running pose twice, and the weight with that lean right there, fantastic. The Al Williamson inks, absolutely nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah.
Interesting to see what it looks like on this glossy paper.
Well, yeah, that's something with this work. Like when we talk about the pantheon of like Frank Miller's works, this one doesn't really come up much, and I think a big part of that is this is the worst production Frank Miller has ever had in his life.
Can you say ever? Compared to some of the...
the close second would be Xerxes.
Yeah.
But even Xerxes is better than this. Dark Knight Strikes Again at least is kind of trying something new and going into it. This is like just... It's super generic. I mean, it's not the colors. It's not that like the colors does a fine job. It's just like the paper, the binding, these covers. It's like, this is shit. This is gimmicks. A shitty comic should have like this kind of embossed and like a Miller thing deserves a better treatment with a more sensitive eye.
Yeah, I would say that this comic it suffers the fate of all the other comics that came out at kind of a bleeding edge period of time.
Yeah, this is bleeding edge.
Where Image Comics is out, and one of their big sales mechanisms is the glossy paper and the computer color. It took a long time for Marvel DC to even match up to those acolytes of Steve Oliff, who were coloring all the Image Comics for much better page rates. So Christy Shield, a master.
Does a great job. It's just like the technology of the time is kind of working against the work and the fashion of the time. Like this kind of, this is considered a deluxe treatment at the time, and it just doesn't age well. I thought this guy was the Kingpin.
Yeah, sure.
Like he's got that
build,
shape. And like reading Miller's treatment and stuff. It's not, but it's like that would be an interesting thing, because the Kingpin is kind of this like background character who appears out of nowhere, and they don't really establish that early, but like you could if you really wanted to pay that off. Totally,
because the way Miller explores the Kingpin character, it's John Gotti, where the old timers, they didn't want to get into the the dark vice of child prostitution and selling black tar heroin to people. And John Gotti is like set up those massacres so that he could gain power and things. But he was just a heavy to begin with. The Al Williamson inking, though, man, is worth mentioning because lifetime of newsprint inking in terms of the production. So we'll hit these like super thin lines, and on this coated paper, those lines are preserved. But these lines when you take a look at the JR Al Williamson Daredevils on newsprint, and they bleed out a little bit.
Yeah, they come and go. They
thicken up
interesting things happen. The sort of magic of newsprint.
Battling Jack Murdock, man, he's a pug. by day and a heavy for the fixer at night. This is one of these panels that always kind of stuck into my head for the body language of it. It's such an intimidating figure, and this guy, he's selling the intimidation quite a lot.
And Miller, I mean, not Matt Murdock, is like, I want to be like you, Dad. And so this is, the beginning of Matt Murdock's alternate identity. It's like his dad walks around with a stick and a mask and beats people up, and Murdock grows up to become a version of that.
Right.
And you could almost they go into it more in his treatment, but that he's kind of known in the neighborhood as like the guy with the bat.
Right.
And if you came up with a name for him, you could almost call him Batman. It could be like the origin of a version of Batman.
Yeah, that's an Elseworlds story.
Yeah.
You have your Frank Miller melodrama, where battling Jack Murdock, man, gets hold of his young son and is like, you can't be like me. You gotta hit the books, kid.
Yeah, and this composition was in the Miller stuff when he was doing the backstory. And then the Miller's thing was taken straight from Everett, too. That pose is right out of Everett.
Such an interesting technique. Like, once we're kids and you start inking, like, you go through a period using this texture. It's the only time it's used in the comic, and I think it's to communicate just cheap IKEA furniture or something. But you never see it used elsewhere here.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Those fire escapes, just bold lines.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, tricky. Really tricky.
But great depth, huh?
Yeah, and part of, like the visual world of like Miller's comics. Yeah.
There's a lot that reminds me of my relationship with my own pops.
Well, don't point to that panel when you say that.
Not this one specifically, man, but my pop's old mill working dude, and he's just like, you are not selling your labor for a wage, man. That shit just ain't happening. But young Matt coming home, hey, I pasted a guy.
Yeah.
Or I poked him. Battling Jack ain't having none of that. What'd I tell you, boy? He hit me, and I knew it was wrong. See, like, Miller's a boomer, dude, and they're the first generation that were like, maybe smacking on your kids ain't the way to go. Well, they were the last smackers, I feel like.
I don't know if like Miller was in therapy or but when you read his interviews and stuff, maybe he's reading self-help books or something, but he's like, he's in that world, like he's exploring like all those kind of things, those ideas with the characters.
This is one of those over-the-top moments. As kids, Miller's removed enough from childhood to be writing this kind of sequence, because like the little nerd kid, out of sight, out of mind. You know, like nobody's like going around like hanging outside of a window like, hey, you douchebag. It's like, good, you're out of here, man. Mission accomplished.
It's interesting, like these origin stories, they accumulate baggage. So it's like, okay, did you become Daredevil because your dad was a wrestler that was a devil, or is it because the kids, kids called you Daredevil? But it's all true. It all becomes true.
The JR interpretation of Stick is well remembered, and you know what? I'm glad you mentioned, checking this out and then accumulating your Frank Millers after that, or whatever, because that was absolutely my trajectory. Also, like this is probably my first Frank Miller Daredevil.
Yeah, it would have been one of mine. Maybe I had like a random issue or two of this stuff, but like this is,
So first impressions are a thing, man. So this is Stick to me. So when you go back to the Miller run and you see the Stick inked by Klaus Janson with all the boils and all the Ronin stuff on his face, it's very shocking.
And Stick, again, I'm just thinking about this stuff thematically, and it's like Stick, his other is a guy with a like Daredevil's a guy with a stick, and then here's his mentor, a guy with a stick. His dad's got a baseball bat. And reading this, I feel like Stick could almost be like a figment of his imagination.
Right.
Like this father that he's created for himself, this taskmaster.
Yeah, it's John Wayne in the Preacher comics. Getting the origin part out of the way really quick, really lushly, hitting all the exact marks that are necessary. And I love the syncopation of this page here. Once again, all shouts to JR for just really never fudging his use of reference and turning it into his own thing. This just looks straight out of Ben Casey.
Yeah, this origin, like I just remember sort of the Daredevil origin, the Ninja Turtles origin, where there's like a single canister, instead of like all this sludge dumped on, it's this single glowing canister that bounces, towards his eyes.
Building Born Again elements into the origin a touch.
Yeah, in his script and instructions, he told JR to try, like, for that sequence of like the hospital and the mom, to try and adhere as closely to what he's established in Man Without Fear, or in Born Again. Yeah, in Born Again, because he said he worked so hard to like establish that stuff back then, so he doesn't want to like contradict it. That was like on his mind.
So when you get here, that's probably the most harrowing view of young Matt Murdock in recuperation mode.
Yeah, it's pulpy. It's part of Miller's bag of tricks. It's sort of noir.
I love the inking on the lips. It's a down plane, so it gets more attention with line, and just the quack reversal direction of these lines coming from that midpoint. It feels so good.
Yeah, Romita always gave a lot of attention to the mouth, like more so than other artists of his generation.
How about this treatment?
Yeah.
Of shadow and following the contour of the face, but not exactly, still using kind of parallel lines, and it's really adventurous. And
Williamson trying stuff on,
and it's dirty.
Yeah, and this is the stuff that makes me think of him as like an imaginary figure.
Sure.
Because it is like when like a child is like unparented or improperly parented, they create a parent in their mind that is like way more severe and unforgiving than like a real parent would be.
Probably a good safety mechanism to grow up and not be completely out of sorts. Great sequence.
Yeah, all this kind of Kung Fu Master kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Pai Mei and Beatrix Kiddo we're looking at right here, man. And it's that thing too, like I have friends who are teachers of young elementary aged school children, and there's a maxim that goes something like you don't smile till Christmas, and Stick is that kind of teacher. Like, yeah, this kid makes some strides, but he's no selling the strides that the boy's making. Congratulations, you're out of elementary school. You can't help but think also, man, that this piece of work, it was in the back of Mark Miller's mind a whole bunch with Kick-Ass.
Kick-Ass, yeah. So yeah, we get this sequence. So you have all this sort of, I guess, like suffering or whatever, and now we get to enjoy the night air, and I come alive at night, that kind of thing.
Another extremely interesting treatment of Stick, because now we're not cutting white into here.
Have they done an artist edition of this?
No, but they should.
Yeah. So Miller, I've also read Miller's addendum that John Romita Jr. talked about on the show, and this is one of those things. Like, he kind of went back. Most of it was plugging Elektra into the story, because she wasn't in the story in the first iteration. So it was plugging, but then there'd be little bits and pieces like this, where it's like, we'll get this big double spread of
like this is a plugged in piece.
This is a plugged in piece. Yeah. After some work had already been done on it. And it's like, that's one of those things with Miller, and I think is the secret of his success. He was kind of told by like the old guard when he was coming in at Marvel that it's unprofessional to rework stuff and revisit and go, you just do it and you're done. But we've seen it all through his career with like Sin City and stuff. He like tinkers with stuff, and that's like a great moment in there.
So we have Battling Jack. He's going Bruce Willis in Pulp Fiction. He ain't going down, and in fact he wins the round, and he knows. But unlike Bruce Willis, he ain't playing no games. He knows what he's in store for.
Yeah, he doesn't have a plan.
This image right there, it's like, I don't even know what I'm looking at.
What's that gun being stuck into? I think it's supposed to be his mouth, but I don't know.
Yeah, like I stared at this image for a long time. It's not really helped out by the color, because there's a bandage just like on the nose right here.
Yeah,
so
that's colored flesh.
These black sockets are eyes.
Yeah.
But his face is all rearranged and pulpy, and it's perfect, because like you should stare at it for a while. It's one of those uncanny things where it's like, what am I even looking at? Man, they did such a number on this guy.
And then Blam as a final panel that really sings. Love
seeing the pencils on the back inside cover. That is a real pleasure. Of Cartoonist Kayfabe is brought to you by the comic books that we make. In stores now, Tom Scioli has Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics, complete biography about the man behind the Marvel Universe in one handy bound volume, 300 pages worth of material there. Fantastic Four Grand Design is still on stands. That is Tom's version of the complete Fantastic Four story in one handy volume. On the racks right now is Red Room Trigger Warnings, 4 issues of that on your local comic shop racks at this very moment. But the Trigger Warnings trade paperback is coming out September 2022. And Jimmy has Hulk Grand Design, Monster and Madness are in your comic shops today. The single issues, 40 pages apiece, telling the complete story of the Incredible Hulk. And around Christmas time comes the Treasury edition of Hulk Grand Design with fluorescent ink on that cover. So that thing is going to stand out a mile away. Now that we're done paying the bills, please support our comics. Let's get back to the video. Let's jump right in, dude.
Yeah, so it's kind of like we covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
And now we can maybe loosen up a little. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like with the storytelling they did.
Something extremely morbid about having a blind boy identify his father, because it's hidden by the panel borders, but how does a blind person identify somebody but by touching their face?
Yeah.
And he's running his hands over a dead dude's face, his father's dead face.
Yeah, I was thinking about that with a lot of the shorthand in here too, of like when they were shooting arrows. It's like, okay, how does he know that he hit the bullseye? Like, you know, we're not seeing the panel where he walks over, feels it, and it's like, oh, you got the bullseye, and then walks back.
They don't explore the echolocation radar stuff very much. There's a panel or two where he's like laying awake at night and he's just like, I could hear this, I could hear that, but it's not over the top stuff. I feel like in certain ways during his regular run, Frank Miller, they push that stuff with onomatopoeia basically as far as you can. There's that one issue that's like all sound effects when his
senses go super.
Yeah.
Well, also like the origins of this project. It's a TV movie or like a theatrical movie, but it's a treatment for the screen. And so you're thinking about like budget, you're thinking about what a movie was back then. And so you try and take out as much as the comic booky stuff as possible. Like really just saving it for maybe even the last page. And then that sort of became a fashionable thing around this time too, was let's pretend these are for adults. You know, let's take out all the embarrassing comic booky stuff. These are movie tropes. These are adapting the Daredevil story to movie tropes.
One of those badass sequences that a young Eddie P in 6th grade really was happy to see in a Marvel comic.
And it's Jack Murdock back from the dead, and this is his sort of like Batman guy with a baseball bat and a mask. In the treatment, he's got a baseball bat, a stocking mask, and then a ball cap over the top. That's the image.
The way JRJR pencils and the shape of his heads when he has them bending, it makes so much sense. And then I imagine with his side of the pencil, like he does like the down plane and just gets it in there real rough. Lets Al Williamson do the work, man. And how about those pubic body hairs, dude?
Again, like we saw it with Mazzucchelli, and it's like you're entering Miller's aesthetic world. So you're throwing in some Millerisms like into the mix.
Such a great sequence, man, with the rule of quarters, punching dude in the face. But once again, not really helped out by the color. You know, those pennies and stuff, they get lost in the dude's shading on his body. And just give him one for the road. But just more great body weight in there. Yeah, Contrapposto with the arm coming forward and the foot.
That's Sonny kicking Carlo that last time.
Rest in peace, man. Jimmy Kahn.
And yes, so this is like he's the neighborhood vigilante avenging his father's murder, and of course he's got a lot of learning to do of this, you know, guy jumping around on rooftops. Yeah,
this is kick-ass.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, same artist too. I mean, that's no coincidence.
Yeah. I would, if I was to give young Matt Murdock any advice, I would say get out of the Levi's jeans, man. Maybe get something a little bit more mobile.
Yeah, it's like it rips every time he jumps down. Like
more of that body language, man. Corners a dude who has a freaking heart attack. There's all this like Matt Murdock has a body count.
Right.
He's killed people, but like all these moves to make it happenstance or weird accidents.
Well, and he's learning, and like body counts and things are important to Miller. And with Batman never kills. Like that means, but Miller, Daredevil is like a Marvel hero. He's a flawed hero, so he makes mistakes. And just like with Spider-Man and Ditko, you're allowed to make mistakes as a superhero kid. But then you cross a line where it's like you're a grown-up and you don't make them anymore. And so we see him approach and then cross that line. And like we're in like movie land, whether it's because it was a treatment or because Miller's mind was just there. But we're in movie land. So it's like we got a lot of like Murtaugh and Riggs, kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
And so this is how Lethal Weapon starts. You know? So I think that image. And of course, like... Taxi Driver is like a big reference for like these, vigilante stories that he's... So this seems like something that,
Well, let's explain what this is to the podcast people out there, man. Matt Murdock is getting pounced on by a bunch of, I guess, hookers, accidentally knocks one out of a window, runs off, cries in a little corner. That's a Mazzucchelli pose, dude, from Born Again.
Yeah, so she dies, and that's on his conscience for the rest of the story, and it becomes like a repeating motif.
Yes. Now here's the only argument for like maybe this page, like to go with your thesis.
Yeah.
This page should just be ripped out.
Right. Because
this is no point of view. Has nothing to do with Matt Murdock. Mm-hmm. It's a completely separate scene. It's the only separate scene of the entire comic, and it is it's basically just shoehorning in a bit about the mystic ninjas that we'll see with the hand eventually.
Because this is the Daredevil Bible, and he forgot to put Elektra in it. He puts Elektra, not shoehorn, but he does a 60-page addendum or whatever, to 80-page addendum to put Elektra back in it. But, like, how complete do we need this thing to be? He could have had John Romita working on this forever.
Yeah.
If he was like, okay, you know what? We need to put more of the hand. So the hand just gets hinted at. There's a touch of hand, and it's like, if you want to see more of that crazy ninja shit, read the comic.
Right. Love these captions with the arrows. Not enough of these in comics.
Yeah, that becomes part of Miller's vocabulary. You see it in All-Star Batman and Robin. That kind of stuff. And so, Daredevil's like the secret righter of wrongs.
Yeah, right. This is Animal House gone wrong. And another example of, like, you have to live with these structures your whole life to be able to draw something that sort of believable. And when you see the pencils that JR does for a lot of this stuff, where he is really legitimately using just the side of that pencil for, like, the foliage and stuff, he's just dashing marks out. It's just he's making the perfect marks every time. Super humbling.
Yeah, it's like a lifetime in comics.
So after and by the way, this is the university. Like, are there such things as university bullies? Like, isn't everybody kind of like living their own life?
Yeah, I mean, maybe because like Miller skipped it, and went straight to professional.
Right.
He skipped all that, so he's like guessing. He's like watching,
or maybe this
Animal
is like,
House. Or
maybe
something.
this is like CCAC 13th.
Right. Yeah, 13th grade. Yeah, KKF, Community College of Philadelphia, is what it was called.
That's your 13th grade over there on the other side of the state. Got a good goose egg, man. Like, those bullies ain't playing. There is that part in your school life, usually around middle school when puberty really starts hitting, where when you were in elementary school and you got into fights, it would maybe sting. Mm-hmm. But now you got guys who could legitimately break bones with their fists.
Some weight behind. Yeah. And so, there's a girl who's interested in Matt, and there's no time for that.
Yeah,
he's a man on a mission.
No emotion.
And so then we get this sequence where him and his roommate are lying in bed, shirts open and stuff. And it made me think of that thing Neil Gaiman talked about where, like, his editor told him there is no masturbation in the DC universe. And that explains a lot about the DC universe was his return. And that's what I think of there. It's like he's like these guys should be out, with girls or something, or like, doing something. And they're like, there's all this like sexual energy that Matt Murdock like refuses to do anything with, keeps contained. So of course he has to like dress up in a crazy costume and go jumping off rooftops and things.
I mean, even his legs are crossed. Moving toward your point, you know, he's fully cutting himself
it's no
off.
accident. And then it's like, what happens immediately after this? You know, Elektra comes into his life and, you know, it's an explosion.
So we have a 2-page sequence just letting you know very subtly about the hearing ability. Mm-hmm. And boom, look at that, dude. Just another one of those masters of the planes, man. Mm-hmm. The down plane far away from the moon. I mean, this is Ava about to like dive into her pool.
Now they started work on this in like I think 88 or 89 and then it comes out in 93, but you know, Sin City has hit the
for 2-3 years.
So we're seeing an overlap definitely. In themes and approach.
JR draws some of the best high top sneaks I've ever seen in comics.
Yes.
Like these look real solid, man.
And this is just this is like this guy who's been bottled up all day. This is how it comes out.
Yeah. And little did you know, but there's a lady who's enjoying that stuff too. This is that Frank Miller shit where he talks about the operatic sex of superheroes.
Yes, and yeah, this becomes like this is superhero sex, and you see it again with Superman and Wonder Woman in Dark Knight Strikes Again.
Yeah.
This is how you have sex in a universe where there's no such thing as sex.
Right. You know? Yeah. The culmination probably be like at that beginning sequence in Holy Terror with that Batman Catwoman.
Right,
just characters.
Yeah,
with literal explosions.
And that scene earlier you referred to with Stick talking to like his master, like they established like he is the chosen one, she is the chosen one, but he is flawed. We probably won't be able to take him, and she's pure evil. You know,
right?
The bad guys are gonna recruit her.
He's got this stealth outfit on, and it's nighttime. So this is JR solving the problem of black clothes on black sky by cutting in the city lights and things. Real smart, but still allowing space for the black to kind of overlap with one another. And because it is Daredevil year 1 through 7, you got to have your moments. This is you know, the bad guy dropping the TV moment.
Well, yeah, and Daredevil kind of has that or Miller's Daredevil has that imperfection built in.
Yeah.
And you know, and he's still and also, you know, he's built on the Spirit. And the Spirit has that too. Spirit's always getting his ass kicked.
Right.
You know?
Just more of that setting, you know, like I wonder, JR, man, did you go out on the town and just take some snaps because it feels too authentic.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen his setup and he's just got photos everywhere.
Yeah, the biggest drafting table money could buy. Shouts to Al Williamson with these tree textures, just cutting things in with what almost looks like Sharpie or something.
Yeah.
Just big markers. Breadcrumb trail.
Yeah, this clothes sort of strewn everywhere. Another like cinematic thing. That would be like a scene in every movie around that where you'd like pan through like the clothes discarded on the floor and then you get to like the bed, you know.
Yeah, it's almost reverse Hansel and Gretel where the Wicked Witch is laying the breadcrumbs. And then, see, he's got the greatest alibi ever by being a blind dude.
Right.
Because he's out doing crazy shit, man. But when the cops come get him, they're like, oh, this dude is blind?
Yeah, it's been a while since I read this, so it's like, okay, is this where he, like, breaks the handcuffs and, like, you know, that kind of stuff? But no, yeah, that's the alibi that gets him out. And she's, you know, like, I was reading this, and I'm like, oh, she's a psychopath. Like,
yeah.
She's just out for like thrills and like, you know, and self-destructive too. And I thought maybe that's too extreme. Maybe that's too extreme a judgment. And then I read Miller's treatment and he calls her psychotic. I don't know if there's a difference between psychopath and psychotic, but you know, that was, and he said to JR, the way I want you to sell her psychotic nature is facial, to have her make completely inappropriate facial moves. So like when it's her dad's funeral, she's got some like very inappropriate look on her face, or you know, this and that, and it comes through in the sauce.
That is a scary face.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no accidents in this kind of work, you know, where you have two, you know,
driving at high speeds and using the steering wheel as a pillow. Very terrifying. And we've seen this built in a couple panels already, the motif of the falling lady that is haunting him.
That's his continual reminder to not let go of this strict control he has over himself.
So sad, the bounds of the printing technology of the day, man, because I want to see that.
Right.
You know, I want to see that so bad. But you could see that side of the pencil stuff that JRJR does. Now this is the one, man. This is the first one that I got my hands on, thanks to
and these are all the addendum things.
Okay.
So like they were deep in, and it's like we need Elektra. I can't do this Daredevil Bible without Elektra. So here's a bunch of stuff putting Elektra back into the story. You know, we would have skipped to like book 4 and skipped part of book 3.
I am a big fan, when done right, of the stationary camera angle.
Me too.
Where we get to see these beat for beat moments, and JRJR, like, it's that body movement, man. Leaning forward with one arm in one panel, leaning forward with the other arm.
Does the squeeze, flex your rib cage,
and this is posed out. Great body movement. You got the heavy kind of walking by, you know, from Canon Films, central casting, heavy. I believe I saw this page penciled before with all of the shading. And like what this would be in the JRJR is just a light value of gray shading.
Yeah, just the side of the pencil.
Yeah.
And again, that's part of why we're seeing all these unconventional Al Williamson choices, because it does leave it to the inker to choose what to do with those side pencil things. There's a million things you could do with it. And Williamson has that built-in Alex Raymond bag of tricks. He has a million textures he could put in there.
So this is like a pretty weird scene, and tell me if I'm getting this wrong, but Matt Murdock is just kind of showing up, sort of for no reason. He has some attraction to this girl.
Yeah, he wants to find out her story, like what's up with this girl. You know,
so he trespasses.
Yes. He's a scofflaw, a criminal, I guess would be better.
And knocks a dude through the greenhouse window, like whatever, the atrium.
Yeah, but I guess since it's a dude and he has a gun, it's different than the, you know,
who's just doing his job also. Right. Like they paid to just
keep but this... you know the dad's like involved in, you know, organized crime or something. You know, he's but you know, I get, you know, and this is Lethal Weapon kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
You know, like a heavy falling through the ceiling. And she loves it. You know,
totally.
She's super into it.
Yeah.
And a recurring thing with Matt Murdock is he could have so easily and probably should have gone wrong. He should have become, you know, like a master criminal. Framed
within frames within frames. There's like panel border. There's the frame of the broken glass. There's the frame of the window. There's the frame of the broken glass. Like, what is that, 4 frames for your focal point? That's incredible. This feels right out of Sin City. Yeah. All you need is a black background there, dude. Like those Uzis, or like Frank Miller Uzis. I feel like Frank got some influence off of seeing some JRJR Uzis or something.
Yeah, I mean, who's to say?
And look at these guys. See, this is why like all authors and stuff have like female assistants and shit, because the Elektra's dad has all these heavies, man, who are so machismo, and they're just shooting up his crib, man. They're jealous.
The comparisons to Sin City are maybe also another reason why this work doesn't get talked about as much, because in Sin City, he does such like a purer, unrefined version of a lot of these story tropes.
This is such a graphic panel. Feels like another Sin City panel. Like you saw that in black and white. Really selling that bullet wound. Such an appropriate open panel here with just the blood trail and the body. Everything you need.
And this is, you know, the psycho showers. Is he about to get stabbed? And it's like, no.
They're about to do some fluid bonding.
Some stabbing is going to happen.
We're going to become blood brothers. And she comes out looking all fresh. We're super happy. And look how satisfied he looks.
What the devil could Matt be doing in there? And it's like, he's doing Elektra in there. That's the punchline.
And here's your operatic superhero sex. Like the
you tear
the curtains,
up the room.
The curtains don't even stay up. How dope is this, dude?
Yeah, and he's like, she's a good girl. Yeah, I mean, that's the real place. That's the real place. And we've seen this, maybe even the same in actual Daredevil, like in the standard Daredevil comics. So I don't know if this is a reference or it's just that, it's the real place. So it's going to look like it. Now this is this is her, and she's a, she's a vigilante of sorts, but it's about thrills for her. And the one thing I've noticed, and maybe this is because of the movie treatment aspect, they've taken out the ninja stuff. So she's wearing this is like underwear or whatever, but it's like a version of the costume she wears. But you never see her pull out a sai or throw a ninja. It's almost I'm wondering if by this point in the 90s, Miller is maybe embarrassed about that stuff, or feels like, okay, well, this is, that's fine for the kids, but this is
Yeah, you got to think much smaller with a movie kind of treatment.
Yeah.
And it's sort of too bad because this is a comic. So,
Right,
so
yeah.
if you're going to go back and make addendums,
which would be another criticism against this, is that it's, compared to other Miller works, it's maybe one of the ones that's more embarrassed of its comics and doesn't celebrate its comics origins as much with the goofy stuff,
Yeah. Some more of those shapes and planes that JRJR does so well.
This stuff is also similar to the way that Catwoman was handled in Sam Hamm's original Batman 2 script, that she's like a psychopath, kills goes out and kills people, and then she I love this bit, and imagining it in Miller's script of writing out
Skelter.
Yeah, I love New York in blood. It's the Thriller video or something, but that kind of stuff was, the Catwoman did that kind of stuff in the Batman 2 script, and I could just, because that I Love New York ad campaign was relatively recent. He writes this thing in 88. That was early 80s. So it's he's walking around with that in his head. So, the image of blood spelling out I Love New York with the heart.
More of that operatic superhero sex.
And they're happy. They've found a happiness, but something about both of their characters just can't allow that to persist.
I Stick hits him with the Vulcan nerve pinch. Mm-hmm. And the scene earlier where the boys are just laying there in their dorm room, and Foggy Nelson has a TV between his legs.
Yeah, watching Star Trek.
I have it on good authority that Frank Miller is a Trekkie.
Yeah, he did some Star Trek covers, were some of his earliest Marvel work. Yeah, here's the bearskin rug scene that was in a lot of movies of that era.
When Matt Murdock has a moment of happiness, you just know it's not going to last very long. It's not allowed.
It's noir, it's serial storytelling, and then it also works with the characters.
And then here comes Wilson Fisk, John Gotti becoming the de facto leader of the Gambino crime family.
My dear silent nameless friend, give me a back rub. He says something like that, and then
you're the only person I could trust.
Yeah.
Click, snaps that neck piece.
Takes the rose, part of his iconography.
Yeah. Great cityscape.
Yeah.
Almost like from the intro sequences of Dark Knight.
Mm-hmm.
2 more to go.
Now, I like this. They took Miller's introduction that he wrote for this book and then made it into comics, taking, pieces from the from the story so far. And it's you're a bunch of issues in. If you didn't read the first, let's get you up to speed.
Right.
And we have the introduction of this kind of Gary Busey in Lethal Weapon kind of character.
You always need that second in command guy who's going to be, the second to the last boss. We know that you're not going to get one up on Kingpin. Mm-hmm. He's too important a character to be captured or killed. So you got to build in some Joe Schmo. Cyclone fences, huh?
Yeah, and
three different ways to draw them, just with line, border lines, outlines.
Yeah, this is the hardest way to do it, to draw them. This is, go for this if you can. And Matt's about to leave New York forever. Good riddance. He's going to move to Boston, get a good job at a firm, and he just is going on a walk, a farewell to New York, and his feet just kind of take him to, Hell's Kitchen.
Yeah.
And he finds trouble.
And he imagines them calling him Daredevil. They don't even say it.
Yeah, that's in the treatment too. That it's in his head, like he's just hearing the nickname. This is what
This is a great horror movie sequence right here, right?
Well, yeah, that's like we saw with Elektra, and then we see with a lot of these like revenge scenes with the mask and stuff. It's slasher movie, another modern reference in this era. It's slasher movie iconography and like another way of thinking about these like masked, superheroes as sort of slashers, and like Rambo, like the Rambo novel or whatever.
These last two issues are almost standalone compared to the first three.
They are, and
because you're building in all new stuff. You're building in that Gary Busey.
Yeah.
You're building in this chick.
Yeah, this is like your final act.
Who's just a plot device. Like she's injected in here in issue 4 only to be captured.
Yes.
That's her whole purpose in life.
She mirrors Matt Murdock, and this is like what he was as a kid, and in the treatment, she's Betsy Ross. She's the one who sews the first Daredevil costume based on his dad's. I kind of had it in my head, like I thought that they had retconned that that Miller had retconned that yellow costume as being, Daredevil, like young Matt Murdock grabs his dad's wrestling outfit and puts it on and starts kicking ass, and then makes his red costume. But maybe I'm just imagining that. But yeah, Kingpin gets introduced, like in the way they Gaiman gets another pass on Sandman. If Miller does a Daredevil TV show that he gets to produce, maybe he plants Wilson Fisk a little earlier, makes him one of those mob enforcers at the beginning, because it is like there's this like last part that all comes to a head real fast.
Yeah, the first time you see this outfit is in issue 4.
Should have been earlier. And again, it's also like this is pulp stuff. This is like Elmore Leonard.
It is.
When you get close to the end of an Elmore Leonard, all of a sudden the story completely changes. So these are choices. Miller's a smart guy. These are choices, I guess. And so the parents and he's the guardian angel or the guardian devil, listening to their prayers and there to answer them.
So Chekhov's Billy Club.
Yep, there it is in the locker, the same one he stole on page 1.
Yeah. Hasn't been opened for 2 decades.
Yeah, in the treatment it says how his locker's been rusted shut. Like he hasn't touched it since he was a kid. And he's popping up everywhere following the dad as he's being sent on it's two addicts who just come up with this harebrained scheme, and now the Kingpin wants to kill them. But they're having this guy run all over the place so they can get a little extra money out of him.
Right. There's planting the money. There's a junkie.
There's a deleted scene that they have in the back where the dad that's running around with this ransom money notices Matt stalking him, and then he like hits him with the bag of money, like a subway car goes by and it messes with his senses, and then it should be in here, and Miller took it out, and I'd say rightly so. Yeah, this is it. This is the sequence.
Yeah, so this is the father.
Yeah, this is the dad who's got the bag of money, and they keep sending him on a wild goose chase, saying go here, go there, go here.
So good. And the junkie gets hold of the loot, gets his cap peeled by Gary Busey with the 5 head. What a beautiful sequence there.
Yeah, all the staircase action that we expect from
the staircase is established by Alfred Hitchcock in the movie The Lodger. Such a great sequence when you see the Lodger go up and it's just a hand. You just see a hand going higher and higher. So good.
And so then they throw her into this like warehouse, this like human trafficking warehouse, which Miller's explored like more in his work. Like his final Sin City kind of centers around that, like the big bust out. And the like it's a very Daredevil story, like that last Sin City.
Yeah. There's a part where like all the kids join together in song.
They're all singing along with her, and it's talked about more in the treatment, but it's like she knows that he has super sensitive hearing, so she starts singing, and I wonder if Miller had an idea of what song they would be. I'm always curious about that stuff when they talk in comics about somebody singing a song and they don't say what song it is.
I think all these kids were taken from that famous school. So this is how they cope, man.
They're singing the
There's Coco.
I'd like to buy the world a Coke song. And he's got the outfit from the Trial of the Incredible Hulk when Daredevil shows up in there. This was written before that, like 88. It was started before that, but this comes out after that. So I don't know if it's like, who's influencing who. Really cool. Like the last issue is kind of like the all out, like just all out battle. It's kind of an interesting structure because usually like a 4-issue miniseries, you can have Act 1 is issue 1, Act 2 is issues 2 and 3, and then issue 4 is Act 3. But with this, it's like you got 5. So then you can make the whole final issue the big blowout battle that you've been building to this whole time.
Isn't that nearly the cover of that one issue of Dark Knight? Yeah.
And it's like this is what you would get in a movie if it had Daredevil in. Like this is what we did get in the Incredible Hulk movie.
Right.
It's like we are not going to put a red guy in a suit.
Right.
Hey,
look at the tension of our background with the gimmick right here.
Now, my first time, like, sitting, when I was a kid and I sat down and read all of these in a row, I had the time of my life, but it wasn't until these, like, last 2 issues, maybe even the last issue, where I was like, I love this, where it really takes off. And I felt that again in this reading, where it's like, yeah, this is pretty good, yeah, it's not bad. But then when you get to the end, it's like, that structure is, like, a really effective structure.
Agreed. And I would say, like, as a kid reading this for the first time, you get swept up.
Yeah.
And I had a steady diet for maybe 10 years of just grocery store, Marvel DC comics. It didn't even occur to me until that last double-page spread where I was like, oh, he wasn't even in his costume the entire time.
Right, yeah.
It still felt like Daredevil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how much, and Miller stated this, how much surface stuff can you strip away from these characters and still have them be the character?
Yeah.
Like that's a trick he was working on at that time. And this is another instance of that.
More of that great body language and great high tops.
Mm-hmm. And he is, he's his father's son. He's Murdoch 2.0. He's like refined it, changed it a little, but he's still in the family business of kicking ass and taking names.
Great little sequence of him kind of like zeroing in on what he's hearing.
Like, I love this kind of, like, you don't have time for these kind of sequences in a standard comic. But if you make your 4-issue miniseries into a 5-issue miniseries, all of a sudden it's, and this stuff is part of, like, this was part of his initial, this isn't addendum stuff. This was, part of the initial thing.
How about that run pose?
Yeah.
Sick, right?
Great,
like he's really turning a corner hard. We know this, the 2 plot device characters. We know this guy's built in to be the last guy murdered, and, she's the prize.
Yeah, I suppose if Miller had sort of come back to, because this is his last Daredevil work, right?
Yeah.
This is it. So if he had come back to, maybe he would have built her into, the mythology more, but this is his farewell to Daredevil. And he said he has no interest in going back.
With a Ben Oda-like treatment on the lettering there. That could be a D for mad. Utter disrespect, man. Just shooting cab drivers. His one eye's open. They color it flesh and everything, but no, I guess both are open. So our 2 plot devices make their way by way of cab into some sort of abandoned building.
So and then this is like, a really cool, budget conscious sequence, for a movie where it's like he shoots at him, he hits him, and he doesn't care. He shoots at him again, he swats it with his billy club and it hits the floor. He shoots him that last time and hits it with his billy club right in his face, and you realize, like, he wasn't fucking right. This is what this guy can do.
Right. You build in your Kingpin as the overarching villain of the entire Daredevil saga. He's done versions of this, in like the Sienkiewicz graphic novel, and maybe even at the end of Born Again.
In the treatment, there's a huge bust. It's like the end of Taxi Driver or something, like that warehouse.
The Untouchables, man. You just about allowed talking a badge.
It's like filled with cops. It's a huge bust, and Kingpin has to leave the country. He leaves, he gets out of there because he's going to end up in jail otherwise. And then I suppose that explains why he's like out of the picture when he shows up in the Miller run, why he's in Japan or whatever.
This is the kind of thing when, you establish the feature film and then you like leave this bit out so that when it gets brought to the small screen,
Yes.
you have your budget villain du jour. Stick showing up again, and very much like I like this theory that you put out there, man. Especially with the way that we've seen these kind of invisible friends treated, like in Preacher comics, where Stick just shows up at the opportune times,
and they're flipping the coin to figure out if it's going to be Murdoch and Nelson or Nelson and Murdoch. He flips the coin and Stick grabs it and is like, "You lose, kid." And it's like, it's just great. That's his relationship with Stick.
And this carries throughout the entire character. Like, Daredevil is not Batman.
Yeah.
Daredevil is not Spider-Man. He's always a B-lister. He's a
Right.
perpetual B-lister. Also, that's why it's Eastman and Laird, by the way.
They flip the coin?
No, because Uncle Quentin gave the loot, man.
Okay. And then this is the thing you offer to the fans who show up at the movie, that like for the very last shot of the movie you see the costume, you're like, oh man, Daredevil 2 is gonna kick ass.
Right.
And I like the thing of the multiple character shot, and then it starts out with that like yellow Daredevil costume.
Here's the thing though, man. Little kid met Murdoch here, the black bandana met Murdoch there,
Right.
yellow, have your Gene Colan,
Yeah.
and then have that, It's like,
No,
like three of the same. And also, you stop here because I think this same year, during that Scott McDaniel run,
You get the armored Daredevil.
yeah, the Image Comics Daredevil costume with the shoulder plates and shit.
You know what? It's funny you say that, because reading the treatment, reading the script bits and stuff like that, and reading this comic, I so bad want to just draw this comic,
We had Frank Whiteley on going through Akira Volume 5 with us, and he was talking about how, looking at Otomo and Mobius, both of those cartoonists, they excite him to sit down and draw.
Yeah.
And JR has that quality for me. Maybe it's specifically the JR Al Williamson tandem has that effect on me where I am very excited to sit down and draw by allowing us to see these wobbly pen strokes and these very clear like brush strokes. Subconsciously or very consciously, it's telling you these are drawn lines on paper.
Yeah, you see the presence of human hands, that somebody made this.
Right.
It wasn't like stamped out.
And it's exciting, especially for somebody who sits down and draws all day.
Yeah.
It's like, let me make my contribution to comics in my own way after checking some stuff like this out, man. Super fun.
It's a classic. Like it's gone up in my estimation since the last time I read it.
Right. Colored version of that these sequences that got tossed out. This is the JR.
Yeah, his thing about their conversation on the phone.
Dedicated to Dom Mickey Romita.
I'm guessing John Romita Sr.'s brother.
Sure.
Uncle Dom.
Uncle Mickey. Fantastic, man. Long time coming on the channel. Had to bust this thing out.
Just had to wait till Jim was out of town.
Just for the JR treatment alone, the second he said that on the shoot interview that we did with him, made me want to bust these out again and take a look. And with that in mind, that JR admitted that he was going for it hardcore to shut up the haters, to shut up the people who kept bringing up his father's name.
We talk about like the money incentive too around this time, and it's like, I'm going to team up with Frank Miller on one of the few Marvel perennials. Like, this is a standalone, hey, you heard about Daredevil, here he is.
Right.
Like, nice royalties on this one, I'd imagine.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And going forward, JR has had some amazing collaborations, with various writers out there.
Yeah, and re-teamed with Miller on Superman Year One,
Right. Danny Miki on inks, I think. Had to,
Well,
had to-
Al Williamson is no longer available.
had to Jim Lee it up a bit. You good to go?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, Kayfabers, like, follow, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the bell. We'll notify you when new vids are available. Tom, what do you have out there, man?
I have Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics. I have Fantastic Four Grand Design. There's American Barbarian. You can check out my Patreon and see, a bunch of comics that I've been doing over the years. And I have a YouTube channel, Total Recall Show.
Red Room trigger warnings coming out on the stands. The trade paperback is hitting shelves in September 2022. Murder on the Dark Web for Fun and Profit is the name of the game. You can get these comics at your local comic shop. Put in your pre-orders now. If the comic is banned in your comic shop, you hit up the link tree in the description below this video. You're going to be able to order your comics directly from Fantagraphics. Go to Amazon, whatever is most convenient for you. And if you want to read the comics today, I'm actually serializing the next round of Red Room comics on my Patreon. $3 get you the archive there. Nearly 300 pages worth of stuff up there as we speak. New strips every Tuesday, and the work that is being serialized will not hit paper until 2023. We have merchandise in our spread shop that you can grab to help support the channel, and it's something that we love seeing out in the wild at San Diego Comic-Con, at the various comic conventions that have been springing up in the wake of calamity. So wear the Kayfabe flag, grab some merchandise, and since Jimmy is not here, Tom, can you please give the fellas the marching orders? We'll be on our way.
Make more comics.